The council chamber stretched before me like the maw of some ancient beast, all polished obsidian and floating holographic displays that pulsed with the lifeblood of 1,000 worlds. I adjusted my sensory stalks, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. My name is Krell, and I've served as a junior diplomatic observer for the Galactic Union for exactly 3 cycles now. Long enough to know the players, not long enough to understand the game. Today's session promised entertainment, though. The humans were sending another representative. Another one? My colleague Threx clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. How many does this make? 17? 19. I corrected, pulling up the data on my personal display, though 2 of those were recalled before they even finished orientation. The gallery hummed with anticipation as delegates from 400 species settled into their designated spaces. The Vrakan Consortium occupied the upper tiers, their crystalline forms refracting light in patterns that hurt my optical organs if I stared too long. Below them, the methane breathers clustered in their environmental bubbles, releasing occasional puffs of greenish gas that their translators converted into speech. And there, in the central speaking pit, stood High Executor Vorn. If you've never met a Vrakan who's reached the rank of High Executor, count yourself fortunate. Vorn stood 12 feet tall, his body composed of living mineral that shifted and reformed with each movement. His voice, when he spoke, resonated through every surface in the chamber. "We will now hear from the human delegation," he announced, his tone carrying all the warmth of a collapsing star. "If they've bothered to send anyone competent this time." Laughter rippled through the assembly. Not kind laughter. The sort that makes your skin crawl, assuming you have skin. The entrance portal shimmered, and she walked through. I blinked all 3 of my eyes in rapid succession, certain I was experiencing some kind of optical malfunction. She couldn't have been more than 5.5 feet tall. Her hair, an unusual shade of copper, was pulled back in a simple knot. She wore a plain gray suit that looked like it had been purchased from whatever the human equivalent of a discount vendor might be. No ceremonial armor. No intimidating cybernetic enhancements. No weapons visible on her person. She looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong building while searching for a clerical position. "Oh no," Threx whispered beside me. "Oh, this is going to be bad." The human woman walked to the speaking platform with steady steps, her footfalls silent on the polished floor. She carried a simple data pad and nothing else. When she reached the center, she looked up at the assembled might of galactic civilization and smiled. It was not a particularly impressive smile. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice amplified by the chamber's systems but somehow still sounding small in that vast space. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I've been appointed as Earth's new diplomatic representative to this body." "How wonderful," Vorn interrupted, leaning forward so his massive form loomed over the speaking pit. "Tell me, Elena Vasquez, what makes you qualified for this position? Did Earth finally run out of actual diplomats?" More laughter. Elena's smile didn't waver. "I'm a linguist by training," she replied. "I speak 47 languages, 52 if you count the dead ones." "Human languages," Vorn said dismissively. "How quaint. In this chamber, we have beings who communicate through quantum entanglement, chromatic fluctuation, and telepathic resonance. Your primitive verbal skills mean nothing here." "You'd be surprised," Elena said softly. I made a note in my personal log. Something about her tone gave me pause, though I couldn't articulate why. Maybe it was the way she stood, perfectly relaxed, despite being surrounded by beings who could atomize her with a thought. Maybe it was the way her eyes tracked across the assembly, cataloging and assessing. Or maybe I was just projecting, hoping this one would last longer than the others. "The matter before us today," Vorn continued, "concerns Earth's petition for full membership status in the Galactic Union, a petition that has been denied 17 times previously. 19, Elena corrected gently. Vorn's form flickered, which among his species indicated irritation. Excuse me? 19 denials. Your records are incomplete. Earth's first 2 applications were rejected during the preliminary review phase. They don't appear in the official transcripts. A murmur ran through the chamber. I sat forward in my seat. Was she seriously correcting a high executor on matters of record? Regardless, Vorn said, his voice taking on an edge that could cut through hull plating. The result remains the same. Earth has been repeatedly denied because humanity has failed to demonstrate any quality that would benefit this union. You are weak. Your technology is derivative. Your culture is fractured. Your lifespans are laughably short. Give me one reason why we should waste time on your species. Elena nodded slowly, as if she'd expected this exact question, as if she'd heard it all before. I appreciate your directness, High Executor. It saves time. Let me ask you a question in return. How long has it been since the Galactic Union admitted a new species to full membership? Vorn's form solidified into something more angular, more aggressive. What relevance does that have? Humor me, Elena said. I quickly pulled up the data. The answer surprised me. 462 cycles, I whispered to Threx. That can't be right, he hissed back. But it was. Nearly 500 years since the last new species had been granted full membership. Dozens had applied. All rejected. The Galactic Union maintains high standards, Vorn declared. We do not admit species simply to inflate our numbers. Quality over quantity. Of course, Elena agreed. And yet, I noticed that membership has actually declined during that same period. The Fenric Collective withdrew 80 cycles ago. The Borlean Dominion severed ties 40 cycles after that. The Stellar Communion just last cycle. That's 3 species lost and 0 gained. Someone less diplomatic might call that a troubling trend. The chamber fell silent. No one mentioned the departed species. It was considered poor form, like bringing up embarrassing relatives at a formal gathering. You overstep, Vorn said quietly, and I felt my internal organs clench at the threat in his voice. Those species chose to pursue their own paths. That is their right. Absolutely, Elena said. I'm simply noting the pattern. But let's return to Earth's application. You asked for one reason to admit humanity? I'll give you 7. She tapped her datapad, and a holographic display appeared above the speaking pit. Images, statistics, data streams, all organized with surprising clarity. First, human adaptability. We've colonized 17 different environmental types across our system, from underwater stations to zero-gravity habitats to settlements on worlds with gravity twice our standard. We do this without genetic modification, using only technology and training. Unimpressive, sneered a delegate from the methane breathers section. We have populated 90 systems. With environmental suits and habitat domes, Elena countered. Humans live directly in these environments. Our physiological flexibility allows us to adapt to conditions that would kill most species represented in this chamber. She moved to the next slide. Second, human creativity. We've developed 700 distinct musical traditions, 4,000 written languages, and artistic movements that span every conceivable medium. We tell stories. We make jokes. We create beauty, even in the darkest circumstances. Art. Vorn scoffed. You offer us art as qualification for galactic citizenship? I offer you perspective, Elena replied. But if art doesn't move you, let's talk trade. Third reason. Human economic dynamism. Earth's economy has grown by 400% in the last century, despite having no access to galactic markets. We've developed unique manufacturing techniques, agricultural innovations, and resource management strategies that could benefit member worlds facing similar challenges. I had to admit, she was making better points than the previous representatives. They'd mostly groveled or made empty promises. Elena Vasquez was building an actual case. Fourth, human military capacity. That got everyone's attention. Vorn leaned in close, his form shifting to something sharp and predatory. Are you threatening this council? I'm stating facts, Elena said, not backing down an inch. Earth maintains a standing defense force of 12 million trained personnel. Our weapons technology, while not on par with galactic standards, is effective and constantly improving. We've fought wars that lasted decades. We've faced extinction-level threats and survived. If the Union ever faces external aggression, humanity will stand with you. Assuming we wanted your help, Vorn said. Assuming you deserved it, Elena replied. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in 17 different communication methods. Threx grabbed my arm so hard, I thought my circulation might stop. She just insulted a high executor, he gasped. She's dead. She's actually dead. But Vorn didn't atomize her. He stared down at this tiny human woman who had just implied the Galactic Union might not be worthy of Earth's military protection, and something flickered across his mineral features. Respect? Curiosity? I couldn't tell. You have courage, he said finally. Suicidal, foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. Continue. Elena's smile widened slightly. Fifth reason. Human resilience. We've survived. Ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, nuclear war, climate disasters, and our own worst impulses. We're very, very hard to kill. That's a useful trait in an ally. The displays shifted again, showing images of Earth's history. Ruins rebuilt, forests regrown, civilizations that collapsed and rose again. Sixth, human curiosity. We explore, we question, we push boundaries. The galaxy is vast and mostly unknown. Humanity will venture into the dark places, ask the uncomfortable questions, and seek answers that others might fear to find. And the seventh reason? Vorn asked, and I detected genuine interest in his voice now. Elena paused. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes and optical organs and sensory clusters. When she spoke, her voice was softer, but somehow it carried to every corner of that massive space. The seventh reason is the most important. Humanity will remember. Silence. Explain, Vorn commanded. I've spent the last 6 months studying Galactic Union history, Elena said. It's fascinating. 400 civilizations working together, or at least pretending to. But I noticed something strange. Your historical records are remarkably edited. Selective. Whole species are mentioned once and never again. Events are referenced, but not explained. It's like reading a book with chapters torn out. Our records are comprehensive, Vorn said, but I detected uncertainty now. Your records are sanitized, Elena corrected. You've forgotten things you'd rather not remember. Wars that went badly. Negotiations that failed. Species that left because they were pushed out rather than choosing to go. You've built a version of history that makes you look good, and you've repeated it so many times that you believe it. She tapped her datapad one more time. Humans don't do that. We remember everything. The good, the bad, the shameful, the glorious. We teach our children about our mistakes so they don't repeat them. We honor our dead by speaking their names. We write down the uncomfortable truths, and we keep them, even when forgetting would be easier. The display above her shifted to show a simple monument, just stone and names. This is a memorial on Earth, she said. It lists the names of 23,000 people who died in a war that we lost. We built it in the capital city, where everyone can see it. We don't hide our failures. We learn from them. Your point? Vorn asked. My point is that the Galactic Union needs someone who remembers, who keeps the true history, who asks why things are the way they are, instead of just accepting that they've always been this way. You need an outsider, someone not invested in maintaining the comfortable lies. Elena closed her datapad. You asked for one reason to admit humanity. I've given you 7. But here's the real question you should be asking. Can you afford not to? The chamber buzzed with conversation. Delegates consulted with each other, analyzed her words, calculated angles and advantages. Vorn was silent for a long moment. His form shifted through several configurations, and I realized he was thinking, actually considering her arguments, rather than dismissing them out of hand. Your presentation was, he paused, adequate. However, Earth's admission requires unanimous consent from the High Council. That includes representatives from the Vraken Consortium, the Methane Collective, the Stellar Confederation, and myself. I can tell you right now that you will not receive that consent. Because we're weak, Elena said. Because you're young, Vorn corrected. Give humanity another 1,000 cycles. Develop your technology. Expand your territory. Prove that you can survive without our help. Then, perhaps we'll talk. That's what you told the last representative, Elena said. And the one before that. And the 15 before them. It's always, not yet, not ready, maybe later. You know what I think? I'm certain you'll tell me, Vorn said dryly. I think you're afraid of us. The chamber fell absolutely silent. Even the environmental system seemed to pause. Explain that statement, Vorn said, his voice dangerous now. Elena met his gaze without flinching. The Galactic Union has been stagnant for 5 centuries. No new members. No major technological breakthroughs. No expansion into new territories. You're comfortable, safe, predictable. And humanity is none of those things. We're chaotic and creative, and we don't respect tradition just because it's old. We'd ask questions you don't want to answer, challenge assumptions you've never examined, force change when you'd rather maintain the status quo. You're not afraid we're too weak to join you, she continued. You're afraid we're too disruptive. Vorn's form shifted to something I'd never seen before, something sharp and angular and aggressive. You dare accuse this council of cowardice? I accuse this council of complacency, Elena replied. There's a difference. The difference being that cowardice might be forgivable, Vorn said. Complacency suggests weakness of purpose, lack of vision, an institution that has outlived its usefulness. Wait, was he agreeing with her? High Executor, one of the Methane Collective representatives interjected. Surely you're not giving credence to these accusations? I'm considering the possibility, Vorn said slowly, that this human has identified a problem we've been ignoring. He turned his attention back to Elena. You've made your case for why we should admit Earth. Now tell me why Earth wants to join us. What do you hope to gain? Elena smiled, and this time there was something almost sad in the expression. Protection. From what? Vorn asked. From what's coming. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. I felt my secondary heart start beating faster, though I couldn't explain why. Elaborate, Vorn commanded. Elena took a breath. 3 cycles ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something at the edge of our system. Transmissions, not directed at us. More like radio chatter, as if someone was having a conversation and we accidentally overheard it. She pulled up new data. Our linguists have been analyzing it. The language is complex, layered, nothing like anything we've encountered. But we've managed to translate some fragments. Enough to know that whoever's sending these messages, they're talking about territory, about resources, about expansion. There are many species in the galaxy, Vorn said. Most ignore pre-spaceflight civilizations like Earth. These don't, Elena said. One of the translated fragments specifically mentioned Sol System, our sun. They know we're here. They're coming. And we are, as you've repeatedly noted, woefully unprepared to defend ourselves against an advanced civilization. I felt cold. This was new information. The previous human representatives had never mentioned any external threat. Why are we only hearing about this now? Vorn demanded. Because Earth's government hoped we could handle it ourselves, Elena said. Pride, mostly. The same pride that's kept us knocking on your door for 20 years, despite being rejected every time. But 3 weeks ago, the transmissions stopped. Complete silence. And our analysts believe that silence means they're close, within a cycle, maybe less. You're using fear to manipulate this council, one of the Stellar Confederation delegates accused. I'm using truth to wake you up, Elena countered. Whatever's coming, they'll reach Earth first because we're on the outer rim. But if they're expanding, if they're claiming territory, do you really think they'll stop at one small system? How long before they reach Union space? Vorn was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. If what you say is true, this changes the calculation. However, it also raises questions about your motives. You want our protection, but what you're offering in return is a problem. An incoming threat that may or may not actually exist. The threat exists, Elena said firmly. Perhaps, but you must understand our position. The Galactic Union has existed for 12,000 cycles. We've faced threats before and survived. We've built a civilization that spans thousands of worlds, and you're asking us to risk that stability to defend a species that hasn't even achieved faster than light travel. I'm asking you to remember what it was like to be vulnerable, Elena said. Every species in this chamber started somewhere. Someone helped you. Someone took a chance. I'm asking you to pay that forward. Sentiment, Vorn said dismissively. Emotion has no place in strategic decisions. Doesn't it? Elena asked. Then why does the Galactic Union exist at all? You could have remained isolated, each species protecting only their own interests. But you chose to band together, not out of logic, but out of a shared belief that cooperation makes everyone stronger. That's not strategy. That's hope. And hope is the most powerful emotion there is. She straightened her shoulders. I came here today expecting to be rejected. Again. I watched the footage of Earth's previous representatives being mocked, dismissed, and humiliated. I knew I was walking into a room full of beings who think humanity is beneath their notice. But I came anyway because I believe in what the Galactic Union could be, even if it's fallen short of that ideal. You presume to lecture us on our own ideals? Vorn asked, but the threat had faded from his voice. I presume to remind you, Elena said. Someone has to. Vorn looked around the chamber, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. The human raises uncomfortable points. This council will take her petition under advisement. We will reconvene in one cycle to render final judgment. High Executor, Elena said. We don't have a cycle. Then you'll have to hope we work quickly, Vorn replied. He gestured, and the massive doors of the chamber began to open. You are dismissed, Elena Vasquez. The council will deliberate in private. Elena nodded and turned to leave. As she walked past my observation post, she glanced up and caught my eye. She winked. Actually winked. I sat there, stunned, as she disappeared through the doorway. Well, Threx said beside me, that was different. Different didn't begin to cover it. The council deliberated for 3 days straight, 72 hours during which I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on any other task, couldn't stop replaying Elena Vasquez's words in my mind. Threx thought I was losing my sanity. She's just another human, he said as we floated in the observation gallery, watching the sealed chamber doors. Articulate? Sure. Bold, definitely. But ultimately, powerless. Maybe, I muttered, or maybe she's exactly what she claimed to be. Someone who remembers. On the third day, the doors opened. The delegates filed out in their usual hierarchical order, but something felt different. Conversations were hushed. Tensions ran high. I caught fragments as they passed, arguments that had clearly grown heated, alliances fracturing over questions that hadn't been asked in centuries. Elena had done that. One small human woman with a datapad and dangerous questions. Vorn emerged last, his mineral form darker than usual, almost opaque. He moved slowly, as if carrying tremendous weight. When he reached the announcement platform, every display in the station activated simultaneously. After extensive debate, his voice boomed across every channel. The High Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's petition for membership in the Galactic Union. My heart's pounded in completely different rhythms. The petition is denied. I felt something sink inside me. Of course. 20 rejections now. Nothing ever changed, but Vorn wasn't finished. However, Earth is granted provisional protectorate status, effective immediately. Union Defense Forces will be deployed to Sol System within 12 hours. Any hostile action against Earth will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Union itself. The feeds exploded with reactions. Outrage from some quarters, approval from others, confusion from most. Furthermore, Vorn continued, speaking over the noise, Elena Vasquez is appointed as Earth's permanent observer to the High Council. She will attend all sessions, voice Earth's concerns, and serve as humanity's advocate within our deliberations. This position has not existed for 6,000 cycles, but circumstances warrant its revival. He paused, and I could have sworn I detected something like amusement in his crystalline features. She will also lead a new initiative. The Union Historical Accuracy Commission. Its mandate is to review all official records, identify discrepancies, and restore deleted or edited information. Full transparency. No exceptions. Every member species will be required to cooperate. The outrage doubled, tripled. Delegates were screaming in 17 different communication methods. Vorn raised one massive hand, and silence fell like a hammer. This council has grown comfortable, he said, and his voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. We've forgotten that stagnation is just another word for dying slowly. The human reminded us of something essential. We cannot move forward while clinging to comfortable lies. Change is coming whether we want it or not. The only question is whether we meet it with strength or let it sweep us away. The broadcast ended. Vorn descended from the platform and walked directly toward the gallery where Threx and I sat frozen. He stopped below us and looked up. "Observer Krell," he said, and I nearly fell out of my seat. "You've been documenting these proceedings for 3 cycles, correct?" "Yes, High Executor," I stammered. "Good. You're reassigned. As of now, you're Elena Vasquez's attaché. You'll assist her with the Historical Accuracy Commission, provide technical support for her observer duties." "Sir, I'm not qualified for such a position." "Neither was she when she walked into that chamber 3 days ago," Vorn replied. "Qualifications can be earned. What matters is whether you have the courage to seek uncomfortable truths. Do you?" I thought about Elena's words, about the species that had left the Union, about the gaps in our historical records, about 500 years without a single new voice asking why things were the way they were. "Yes, sir," I said. "Then report to the Human Embassy within the hour." Vorn turned to leave, then paused. "And Krell? Don't let her get killed. I have a feeling we're going to need her." The Human Embassy was smaller than I expected. Just 3 rooms in a converted cargo module on the station's lower ring. Elena sat at a desk that looked like it had been salvaged from somewhere, surrounded by holographic displays showing data streams, star charts, and what appeared to be linguistic analysis patterns. She looked up when I entered and smiled that same unsettling smile. "Krell, right? The Thulian observer who's been taking notes in the back row? You noticed me?" "I notice everything," she said. "It's kind of my job." "So, Vorn assigned you as my attaché? Against all logic and reason?" "Yes." "Great. I could use the help." She gestured at the displays. "I've got about 16 impossible tasks to complete, and maybe 4 days before everything falls apart." "You mean the threat you mentioned? The transmissions?" Elena's smile faded. "Sit down, Krell. We need to talk." I settled into a chair designed for beings twice my size and waited. "The transmissions are real," she said. "The analysis is accurate. Something is coming toward Earth. But here's what I didn't tell the Council. We've actually managed to translate more of the language than I let on. A lot more." She pulled up a new display. Symbols I didn't recognize, accompanied by phonetic guides and contextual notes. It took our best linguists 18 months, but we cracked it. And what we learned was terrifying. "What are they?" I asked. "Collectors," Elena said simply. "That's the closest translation we have. They move through space, harvesting resources from systems they encounter. Minerals, gases, biological material. Everything. They strip worlds down to bedrock and move on." I felt my skin go cold. "How many worlds have they taken?" "At least 40, that we can confirm from the transmissions. Probably hundreds more." She leaned forward. "But here's the interesting part. They're methodical, careful. They study their targets before moving in, which means they've been watching Earth for a while, learning about us." "Then why tell the Council you weren't sure when they'd arrive?" "Because I was testing them," Elena said. "I needed to know if they'd respond to a threat, or if they'd hide behind procedures and protocols. If Vorn had dismissed the danger, I'd have known the Union was too far gone to save." "Save? From what?" Elena stood and walked to the window, staring out at the stars beyond the station. "The Collectors aren't just a threat to Earth, Krell. They're systematic, efficient. And according to their transmissions, Sol System is just one stop on a much longer route. A route that passes directly through Union space." The implications hit me like a physical blow. How many systems are in their path? "Including 3 Union core worlds." She turned back to me. "That's why I needed full protectorate status. Not just to defend Earth, but to get the Union mobilized while there's still time. They've been at peace so long they've forgotten how to prepare for war. But you haven't." "Humans never forget how to fight," Elena said quietly. "It's one of our less admirable traits. But sometimes it's the trait that keeps you alive." A chime sounded from one of her displays. She glanced at it, and I saw her expression shift. "What is it?" "Defense forces are in position around Earth," she said. "Faster than promised. Vorn actually expedited deployment." She looked thoughtful. "Maybe there's hope for them yet." "What happens now?" "Now we wait," Elena said. "The Collectors are close. Our monitoring stations picked up gravitational distortions, consistent with large-scale, faster-than-light travel. They'll drop into real space at the edge of Sol System within 48 hours. And then? And then we find out if the Galactic Union still remembers how to stand together when it actually matters." The next 2 days were chaos in slow motion. Elena coordinated with Union military commanders, feeding them intelligence that Earth had gathered about the Collectors. Ship movements, tactical patterns, communication protocols. I watched her work with a precision that would have impressed any seasoned diplomat, moving pieces around a board that most people couldn't even see. She slept 4 hours total across those 2 days. I'm not sure she ate at all. On the morning of the 3rd day, the alarms sounded. "They're here," Elena said, pulling up the tactical display. 8 massive vessels had appeared at the edge of Sol System, each one the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, advancing slowly toward Earth. The Union Defense Fleet was already moving to intercept. 23 warships, representing 7 different species. Not a huge force by galactic standards, but more firepower than Earth had ever seen assembled in one place. "Will it be enough?" I asked. "If they're willing to negotiate, maybe. If they're committed to harvesting Earth regardless, then no. Those ships could probably crack a planet open if they really wanted to." A communication request flashed on her screen. "Vorn's identifier." She accepted, and the High Executor's face appeared, his mineral features sharper than I'd ever seen them. "They're attempting to communicate," he said without preamble, "broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Your linguists were right about the language. Our translators are having difficulty parsing it. I can help, Elena said immediately. Patch me through. Elena, if you engage with them directly, you become a target. I've been a target since birth, High Executor. Everyone on Earth has. That's what it means to be human. We're always one disaster away from extinction. It focuses the mind wonderfully. Bourne made a sound that might have been laughter. Very well. Stand by. The display shifted, and suddenly I was looking at something that made my sensory organs ache. The being on the screen wasn't solid. It seemed to phase in and out of reality, its form constantly shifting between states. Eyes appeared and disappeared. Appendages formed and dissolved. It was like watching something exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When it spoke, the sound bypassed my auditory organs and appeared directly in my consciousness. Harvesting operations will commence in 6 standard cycles, it said. The translation was rough, glitchy, but comprehensible. Biological entities should evacuate the 3rd orbital body. Resistance will be processed as additional resources. Elena leaned toward the screen, her expression calm. My name is Elena Vasquez. I represent both Earth and the Galactic Union. This system is under Union protection. Your harvesting operations will not proceed. The collector flickered, and I sensed something like confusion ripple through its form. Protection designation irrelevant. Resources have been identified. Extraction follows identification. This is function. This is purpose. I understand your purpose, Elena said. But this system contains billions of sentient beings. We cannot allow you to harm them. Sentience is temporary. Matter is eternal. We return matter to its purest form. This is service. Service? Elena's voice sharpened. You're destroying civilizations. Civilizations are arrangements of matter. Arrangements change. This is natural. This is correct. I watched Elena take a slow breath. She glanced at something off-screen, made a quick gesture, then looked back at the collector. Tell me something, she said. Your species, your civilization. What do you call yourselves? Not the designation we gave you. Your actual name. The collector paused. For the first time, its constant shifting slowed. We are the rendering, it said finally. We return complexity to simplicity. We restore chaos to order. We have performed this function for 7 million cycles. 7 million years, Elena whispered. Then, louder. And in all that time, has anyone ever thanked you? Another pause, longer this time. Gratitude is unnecessary. Function is sufficient. But not satisfying, Elena said. I can hear it in your voice, or what passes for your voice. You've been doing this for millions of years, breaking down complexity, erasing civilizations, and no one has ever acknowledged what you've sacrificed. We sacrifice nothing. We perform function. You sacrifice meaning, Elena said softly. Every world you reduced to raw materials had stories, art, love, dreams, things that matter more than their atomic weight, and you erase all of it in service to a function you don't even question anymore. The collector's form began to pulse rapidly. You seek to manipulate this unit through appeals to sentiment. Strategy noted. Strategy ineffective. I'm not trying to manipulate you, Elena said. I'm trying to remember you. Silence. Even the constant background hum of the station seemed to fade. Explain, the collector demanded. Elena stood slowly, moving into the full view of the camera. Your species was something else once, wasn't it? Before you became the rendering, you had a name, a culture, an identity beyond your function. And somewhere along the way, you forgot. You reduced yourselves the same way you reduce everyone else, down to the simplest possible form, purpose without meaning. Meaning is chaos. Chaos requires correction. Meaning is what makes existence worthwhile, Elena countered. And I think part of you remembers that. Why else would you hesitate? Why else would you engage in this conversation when you could have simply started harvesting? The collector's form stabilized for the first time since the transmission began. I could see something like a face now, though it hurt to look at directly. What would you have us do? Elena Vasquez of Earth. Remember, she said simply. Remember what you were before you became what you are, and then make a choice. Not based on function or programming or 7 million years of habit. Make a choice because you can. Because choosing is what separates tools from beings. If we remember, we may cease to function correctly. If you continue without remembering, you cease to exist as anything more than a cosmic force, Elena replied. Is that really what you want? To be entropy with engines? Destruction without purpose? Or do you want to be something more? The longest pause yet. I counted 17 of my heartbeats before the collector spoke again. We require consultation with the primary fleet intelligence. This conversation has introduced variables that our current decision matrix cannot process. Harvesting operations are suspended for 12 cycles while we deliberate. Thank you, Elena said. Do not express gratitude prematurely. We may still conclude that harvesting is the optimal outcome. I know, Elena said, but at least you're thinking about it. That's enough for now. The transmission ended. The room was absolutely silent. Then, Vorn's voice came through the display, and he sounded almost amazed. What did you just do? My job, Elena said, collapsing into her chair. I realized she was shaking. I bought us time. You did more than that, Vorn said. You made them question their entire existence. All I did was remind them they have names, Elena replied. Everything else they have to figure out for themselves. The 12 cycles became 24. Then, 48. The collector fleet remained at the edge of Sol System, unmoving, while their vast intelligence pondered questions it hadn't asked in 7 million years. The Galactic Union, meanwhile, underwent its own crisis of conscience. Elena's Historical Accuracy Commission began its work, and within days, revelations started emerging. Species that had been erased from records. Wars that official histories claimed never happened. Treaties broken and covered up. An entire secret conflict that had cost billions of lives relegated to classified archives. The truth was uncomfortable, painful, necessary. 3 more species withdrew from the Union in protest, claiming they wouldn't be part of an organization that aired its dirty history for all to see. But 5 others applied for membership. Species that had been watching from the sidelines, waiting to see if the Union still stood for something real. And then, on the 50th day, the collectors sent another transmission. This time, Elena wasn't alone when she answered. Vorn stood beside her, along with representatives from 20 Union species, a unified front. The collector that appeared on screen looked different, more stable, more present. We have remembered, it said, and its voice carried weight that hadn't been there before. Our designation was architects. We built wonders across 100,000 worlds, cities that sang, gardens that existed in 7 dimensions, art that humans would call beautiful and we called prayer. What happened? Elena asked gently. War, the collector said simply. An enemy that could not be reasoned with or defeated through traditional means. So we changed ourselves, became weapons, became function. We won. But the war ended 7 million cycles ago, and we forgot to change back. Until now, Elena said. Until you spoke our name and asked us to remember. The being that had been a collector paused. We have been performing our function for so long that entire galaxies have been born and died in the space between. We have erased more beauty than currently exists in all known space. This cannot be undone. No, Elena agreed. but it can be learned from. You can choose differently going forward. We withdraw our claim on this system and the 46 others in our current trajectory," the former collector said. "We will return to our home clusters and begin reconstruction. We will attempt to become architects again, though we have forgotten how." "We could help," Vorn said suddenly. "The Galactic Union has some experience with reconstruction, with remembering what we're supposed to be." The architect's form flickered with something that might have been hope. "You would offer this, after we threatened your protectorate?" "Elena Vasquez taught us something," Vorn replied. "That help should be offered not because it's deserved, but because it's needed. That remembering is a gift we give to each other, that the only way forward is together." 6 months later, I stood in the council chamber once again. But this time, Elena Vasquez wasn't making a petition. She was presenting a proposal. "The Galactic Union has existed for 12,000 years, she said to the assembled delegates. "It has achieved wonders. But it has also grown comfortable, selective about what it remembers, and resistant to change. I propose we formalize a new position, the Remembrancer. Someone whose job is to ask uncomfortable questions, challenge consensus, and ensure we never again forget who we're supposed to be." "And I assume you're volunteering for this position?" Vorn asked, though I detected amusement in his tone. "Actually, no," Elena said, and I felt my organs clench. "I'm recommending Observer Krell. He spent the last 6 months documenting everything. The negotiations with the architects, the Historical Accuracy Commission findings, the time, the species that left, and the ones that joined. He's proven he has the courage to record truth, even when it's unpleasant." Every sensory organ in the chamber turned toward me. "What?" I managed. "You're qualified, Krell," Elena said, smiling at my panic. "And besides, someone needs to keep track of what happens next. We're entering uncharted territory. Best to have a good map." The vote was unanimous. As I walked out of the chamber later, completely overwhelmed by my new responsibilities, Elena fell into step beside me. "Why did you do that?" I asked. "You could have kept that position. You've earned it." "Because I've got other work to do," she said. "Earth's petition for full membership is coming up for vote again next cycle. 21st time's the charm, right? After everything that's happened, you're still not a member?" "Rules are rules," Elena said cheerfully. "Besides, I kind of enjoy the challenge. Keeps me sharp." We reached the observation deck, and she stopped to look out at the stars. "You know what the funny thing is, Krell? Everyone was so focused on whether humanity was worthy of joining the Galactic Union, but the real question was whether the Union was worthy of humanity, whether you'd remember what you're supposed to stand for, whether you'd change when change was needed." "And your verdict?" I asked. "Still out," she admitted, "but I'm hopeful. Hope is kind of our thing, after all." She started to leave, then paused and looked back. "Oh, and Krell? In your new role as Remembrancer, you're going to uncover some things that will make people very uncomfortable. Powerful people. They're going to pressure you to bury those findings, to maintain the comfortable lies. What should I do?" Elena smiled, and it was that same unsettling smile she'd worn when she first walked into the council chamber 6 months ago. "Remember," she said simply. "Remember everything. Write it down. Speak the names. Tell the truth, even when it hurts. That's how we honor on the past and build a better future. That's the gift humanity has to offer the galaxy." She walked away, leaving me alone with the weight of history and the future pressing down on my shoulders. I pulled out my datapad and began to write. This is the chronicle of how Elena Vasquez reminded the galaxy what it means to be alive. How one human woman, armed with nothing but words and uncomfortable truths, changed the course of civilizations. How she taught us that weakness and strength are not opposites, but different forms of courage. I paused. And how she proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply remember someone's name. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, I realized, was exactly the point.